Dad and I had always loved late-night drives. There was something peaceful about them, just the two of us, the open road stretching out in front of us, and the low murmur of the radio playing in the background. It was one of those rare times when we could just talk without interruptions. But that night, as we drove down the winding backroads of Tennessee, we stumbled into something neither of us could explain. It all started with a wrong turn. Dad had been driving down an old familiar route, but somehow, we had ended up on a road neither of us recognized. "We should have taken that left," Dad muttered, gripping the steering wheel a little tighter. I glanced down at my phone. The GPS was frozen. The bluet that indicated our location wasn't moving, no matter how far we drove. Outside, the trees loomed taller, their branches stretching over the road like gnarled fingers. The headlights carved a narrow tunnel through the darkness, but beyond that, the night swallowed everything whole. "I don't remember this road," I said, peering out the window. Dad exhaled sharply. "Neither do I." Then we saw them, shadows, shifting along the road ahead of us. At first, I thought they were just tricks of the headlights, maybe animals moving through the trees. But as we slowed down, it became clear that these figures were unlike anything I had ever seen before. They stood tall, moving without any sound, their shapes flickering like smoke caught in the wind. Dad slammed on the brakes. The car skidded to a stop, tires kicking up dust. My heart pounded as I stared at the figures standing just ahead of us. Their shapes twisted and stretched unnaturally, shifting as if they weren't bound by the same rules of the world as we were. "Stay in the car," Dad whispered, his voice barely audible. He reached behind the seat, grabbing the old baseball bat he always kept in the back. The air felt heavier, thicker, as if we had driven into a place that wasn't meant for us. The temperature had dropped, and my breath came out in small puffs of mist. My fingers dug into the seat as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. The figures didn't move toward us at first. They stood still, watching. I wasn't even sure if they had eyes, but I could feel them looking at us, peering through the windshield like we were something to be studied. Then, without warning, they began to move. One by one, they stepped forward, their forms shifting and elongating as they did. My pulse raced. The headlights illuminated them, but they cast no shadows of their own. The car's engine hummed softly, the only real sound breaking through the suffocating silence. Dad gripped the bat, his knuckles white. "Lock your door." My hands trembled as I fumbled for the lock. The click echoed inside the car, sounding too loud in the eerie quiet. The figures moved closer, slow but deliberate. It was then that I noticed something even more unsettling. The road behind them had disappeared. Where we had come from was nothing but endless darkness, a void stretching into the unknown. "We have to get out of here," I whispered. Dad nodded, his jaw clenched. He slammed the car into reverse, but the tires only spun uselessly against the pavement. It was as if the road itself was holding us in place. Panic clawed at my chest as I watched the figures draw nearer. Their movements were unnatural, fluid yet rigid at the same time, like marionettes controlled by invisible strings. One of them reached out. A long, slender arm extended toward the hood of the car, its fingers impossibly thin and elongated. The moment it touched the metal, a sharp, high-pitched sound filled the air, like the screech of nails on a chalkboard. I clapped my hands over my ears, but the sound burrowed into my skull, vibrating through every bone in my body. Dad let out a sharp curse and slammed his foot on the gas pedal. The car lurched forward, but the figures didn't move aside. Instead, they melted into the air like smoke, vanishing the moment we made contact. The car shot through where they had been standing, and suddenly, the road was clear again. The weight that had been pressing down on my chest lifted, and I gasped for breath. Dad didn't stop. He kept driving, the speedometer climbing higher as we tore down the road. My hands were still shaking as I turned to look out the back window. There was nothing there. No shadows. No figures. Just the empty, winding road stretching behind us. Neither of us spoke for a long time. The silence felt heavy, as if words wouldn't be enough to explain what had just happened. The GPS flickered back to life. The blue suddenly moving again, as if whatever had held us in place had finally let go. After what felt like hours, Dad finally broke the silence. "We don't talk about this to your mom." I let out a shaky laugh, though there was no real humor in it. Agreed. When we finally found our way back to the main highway, the tension in the car slowly began to ease. The lights of a gas station appeared in the distance, a beacon of normalcy. Dad pulled in, turning off the engine, but neither of us moved to get out just yet. "What do you think they were?" I finally asked. Dad ran a hand over his face. "I don't know, and I don't think I want to know." We sat there for a few more minutes, the weight of the night settling over us. Eventually, we got out, stretched our legs, and grabbed some coffee from the convenience store. The cashier gave us a curious glance, probably noticing how pale we looked, but she didn't ask any questions. We didn't offer any answers either. As we got back in the car and continued our drive home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The world didn't seem as familiar anymore. It was as if, for a brief moment, we had stepped into a place we weren't supposed to see. And for some reason, I had the sinking feeling that whatever had been on that road had seen us too. Dad turned up the radio, the sound of an old country song filling the car. He didn't say anything, but I could tell he was trying to push the memory away, to file it away as something we would never speak of again. I stared out the window, watching as the trees blurred past, and wondered if we had truly escaped or if, somewhere out there, the shadows were still watching, waiting for another traveler to take the wrong turn. I never asked Dad about that night again, and we never took late-night drives after that.